They thought they could silence our culture. The HOA told me our annual cultural festival didn't fit the neighborhood aesthetic and tried to shut it down. But what they didn't expect was who I knew and how far I'd go. I wasn't just defending tradition, I was protecting our identity. So I called in reinforcements, grabbed a camera crew, and put them on full display. What followed? Let's just say, the whole town was watching. They said my culture wasn't welcome here. My name is Farah Khan, and I live in a quiet, picture-perfect cul-de-sac in Southern California. It's the kind of place where mailboxes are identical, lawns are trimmed like golf courses, and any difference, even the smallest, is frowned upon. But I've never been one to just blend in. I moved here 5 years ago with my husband Amir and our 2 kids. We're proud Pakistani Americans, and every spring we host a cultural festival in our backyard, a tradition passed down through my family for generations. Food, music, poetry, colors, laughter. It's a day that reminds us and our community of where we come from and what we celebrate. The first couple of years it went smoothly. Our neighbors even dropped by to try biryani and sip mango lassi. But once a new HOA board took over last year, led by a woman named Linda Barrington, things started to shift. It began with minor complaints. The music was too loud, parking was too much, your decorations are distracting. I politely responded, assured them we kept everything within city noise limits, and even arranged valet parking to avoid crowding the street. But I could feel it, the subtle tension in their voices, the fake smiles, the sideways glances whenever my sari sparkled too brightly on my front porch. Then one chilly March morning, I received an official notice on our door. It had the HOA seal and Linda's signature at the bottom. Effective immediately, no private cultural or religious events are permitted that involve amplified sound, street parking, or excessive decorative elements. I stood frozen, reading that letter again and again. I wasn't just angry, I was hurt. This wasn't just about a festival, it was about erasure. I took the letter to my husband Amir. He scanned it, jaw tightening. "They're trying to erase us," he said quietly, "like we don't belong here." But I wasn't going down without a fight. I wrote a respectful email to Linda, asking for a meeting. Her reply was quick and cold. "We must ensure harmony and aesthetic consistency in the neighborhood. Personal cultural displays risk creating division." I couldn't believe it. My culture was a threat? I brought this up at the next HOA meeting. It was packed, mostly with board members and a few disinterested neighbors. I spoke calmly, passionately, even brought printed surveys from nearby residents who supported our event. Linda dismissed it. "We're not saying your culture isn't valuable," she smiled, "just that it doesn't align with HOA guidelines." "But HOA guidelines are being used to silence us," I said, my voice rising. "That's enough," she interrupted. "The board has made its decision." And just like that, they shut me down. That night, I sat on the floor in our family room, staring at the twinkling string lights we used every year for the festival. My daughter Amina came over, hugging me tightly. "Are we still doing the festival, Mama?" she asked. I didn't know how to answer her. But then Amir said something that changed everything. "What if we don't just do the festival? We make sure everyone sees it." At first, I didn't get it. But then it clicked. If they wanted to suppress us behind closed doors, maybe it was time to throw those doors wide open. By the next morning, the spark of resistance had ignited into a full-blown plan. I wasn't going to cancel the festival, I was going to amplify it. Amir and I stayed up late mapping out logistics. We weren't going to break the law, we'd do everything within our rights, but we would push every boundary they'd drawn around us. And most importantly, we were going to document everything. We contacted an old friend of Amir's, Jared, a freelance videographer who worked for a popular online culture and lifestyle magazine. When we told him what happened, he was shocked and intrigued. "This would make one hell of a story," he said. "Let's make it loud." In the following days, I reached out to local food vendors, dance troupes, and musicians we'd worked with in past years. Everyone was in. They were angry too. This wasn't just about our street festival anymore. This was about how minority traditions get steamrolled by the quiet, polished machinery of suburban control. Then came my boldest move yet. I sent a formal invitation to Mayor Renee Caldwell, a progressive and well-respected city leader known for promoting diversity and inclusion. I didn't expect much, but 3 days later her office responded, "Mayor Caldwell would love to attend and show support for cultural engagement in local communities. Please send event details and security requirements." I stared at the screen, breathless. They wanted to silence me. Now the mayor was coming. But we weren't done. Amir set up a live stream plan. Jared brought in a drone and gimbal stabilizers. We filed all the permits with the city. Yes, not the HOA, but the actual city council, and carefully worded our event as a private cultural gathering with public invite. Every step was within the law. Meanwhile, Linda and her board remained blissfully unaware. That is, until the flyers went up. One morning, posters began appearing on bulletin boards, mailboxes, and in the local library. Spring Celebration of Unity, featuring music, culture, and special guest appearance by the mayor. Sponsored by the Khan family and community friends. By noon, Linda had called me 5 times. I didn't pick up. Later that evening, she showed up at my door. "Farah," she said, trying to keep her voice level, "I saw something concerning." "Oh?" I said, completely composed. "This event. You're advertising it publicly. That violates multiple HOA stipulations." "Actually," I said, holding up a city permit, "we're fully authorized. And since it's on our private property and the city has jurisdiction over gatherings of this nature, we're not violating anything." Her face hardened. "And the mayor? That's not real, is it?" I smiled politely. "Would you like a front row seat?" She didn't answer, just turned and walked away, heels crunching the gravel like they were stomping on her pride. The day of the event arrived with blue skies and spring breeze. Our backyard was a mosaic of bright drapes, strings of fairy lights, rugs, cushions, and tables topped with Pakistani snacks, American desserts, and warm chai in clay cups. Children painted their hands with henna. Music floated through the air, both traditional tabla and modern fusion. Neighbors who'd never attended before peeked out from behind blinds, and then slowly began to wander in. By mid-afternoon, we had over 100 guests. Jared was filming every moment. The laughter, the food, the cultural dances. A local teen performed spoken-word poetry about identity and being caught between worlds. An elderly neighbor, Ms. Green, told me, "I've lived here 40 years, and this is the most life I've ever seen in this place." Then, a hush fell over the crowd. A black car pulled up. The mayor had arrived. She stepped out in a bright yellow suit, waving warmly. "Farah, this is spectacular." I introduced her to our guests, and she gave a short speech about community, diversity, and what it means to make room for one another. Linda was watching from across the street, lips pressed into a tight line. But the best moment came later, when Jared announced, "We're live in 3, 2, 1. The live stream went up. Within minutes, hundreds of viewers were watching. Messages poured in. "This is beautiful. Why would anyone try to stop this? HOA should be ashamed." As the sun dipped behind the rooftops, lanterns lit up the sky. A choir of children sang both the national anthem and a traditional Urdu lullaby. Amina, my daughter, danced with a smile I hadn't seen since the letter from the HOA arrived. And me? I stood at the center of it all, not just defying the board, but honoring generations before me. My grandmother, my mother, every woman who hosted a mafil or a food drive or a dance rehearsal in small corners of big countries that never made them feel quite welcome. Later that night, as we cleaned up and hugged guests goodbye, Linda appeared again, this time with two board members trailing behind her. "I hope you're happy," she said, arms crossed. "You've stirred up a lot of attention." I met her eyes, calmly. "Attention to what matters," I said. "To the community you tried to keep quiet." She said nothing, just walked away. But the cameras were still rolling, and the world had already seen.
The HOA's counterattack.
I woke up the next morning riding the high of our success. The festival had been beyond what I imagined. My social media inbox was full. Our live stream had been shared over 12,000 times overnight. Comments flooded in. "This is the America I want to live in. Your story gave me goosebumps. Tell the HOA to sit down." I was proud, empowered, triumphant, until I opened my front door. Taped to it was a violation notice, a bright orange slip stamped "Urgent Action Required." "You are in breach of HOA Policy 7.3, Unauthorized Large Gatherings," and underneath, a list of consequences. A $500 fine, immediate review of your property use, suspension of community privileges pending investigation. My stomach dropped. I looked across the street. Linda's curtains twitched. I was furious. Not surprised, just furious. They'd waited. They hadn't disrupted the event when cameras were rolling, when the mayor was smiling, but now they were striking back, quietly, pettily. I stormed back inside, notice in hand. Amir saw my face and didn't even have to ask. "They're retaliating," I said. "They're trying to erase what we did." He read the letter and exhaled sharply. "Let them try." But the hits kept coming. 2 days later, I got another letter, this time a formal summons to an HOA disciplinary meeting. Then a neighbor, Tom, a quiet retiree, texted me. "Farah, they're going around door to door asking people to sign a petition against your festival." This was war. I decided I wouldn't go down quietly. Instead of replying to their letter, I posted it online, with context. Jared helped me put together a mini documentary, highlights from the festival, interviews with guests, Mayor Caldwell's speech, and then the letter from the HOA. It went viral. Again. Local news picked it up. I was invited onto a morning show. And when they asked me why I thought the HOA was doing this, I said clearly, "Because they fear what they can't control, and they don't know how to handle joy that doesn't look like theirs." That quote made headlines. But the HOA wasn't backing off. The disciplinary meeting was scheduled for Friday evening. Linda and the board wanted to meet to discuss the nature of recent violations and appropriate sanctions. Amir said I shouldn't go. Jared offered to come with me and live stream it. But I had something better in mind. On the evening of the meeting, I didn't walk in alone. I walked in with 6 of my neighbors who had attended the festival. Amina was with me too, wearing the same bright blue scarf she wore while dancing. Behind us, Jared set up his camera, live again. The board was caught off guard. They'd expected intimidation to work. Instead, they faced a small crowd of calm, composed residents. Linda tried to maintain order. "This meeting is to discuss the unauthorized event held at," I interrupted. "The authorized event." She ignored me. "At the Khan residence. As you are aware, the HOA prohibits large public gatherings not pre-approved by the board." A woman behind me, Ms. Green, raised her hand. "That's not what the bylaws say," she said. "They say large gatherings require notice, not approval, and that's for events on shared property. This was private property." Linda flushed. "Well, it caused disruption to the community." Tom, the quiet retiree, spoke next. "Disruption? That was the best thing this neighborhood's had in years. One by one, neighbors spoke, defended me, celebrated the festival. Finally, I stood and placed my permit from the city on the table. And in case you forgot, this document supersedes your personal preferences. Linda's lips trembled. There's still a fine to be paid, she said tightly. The board has voted. I leaned forward. Then I suggest the board prepare for a legal counter. Because what you're doing now, this harassment, has a name, and we're not afraid to fight it. That clip hit 45,000 views in 2 days. The mayor's office issued a quiet statement. We stand with community engagement and cultural celebration in all forms. Linda tried to save face. She released a newsletter praising diverse neighborhood activity and claiming the HOA supports all residents equally. But no one was buying it anymore. Then came the kicker. One morning I received a letter, certified with a gold seal. It was from the Department of Local Affairs and Community Standards. Apparently, my video and posts had reached not just the public, but oversight officials. They were launching an investigation into our HOA board for discriminatory policy enforcement. My knees nearly buckled. Not only had we told our story, we'd triggered actual change. By the end of the week, I found out several of my neighbors had filed complaints of their own, stories of fines, threats, and policy weaponization, all of it being swept into the review. The board was in free fall. And I was planning the next festival, not to prove a point, but because our community now felt like ours again, a new beginning. The HOA board was unraveling faster than anyone expected. 2 days after the Department of Local Affairs launched their investigation, I received a quiet knock at the door. It was Ms. Green, the retired lawyer who'd supported me during the meeting. She handed me an envelope. Thought you should see this. Inside was a printed memo, a resignation letter from Linda, the HOA president. In light of recent events and due to personal reasons, I hereby resign from my position effective immediately. No apology, no ownership, just an exit. But it was enough. A community awakens. With Linda gone, the board had no choice but to hold an emergency election. Residents who had once felt silenced were suddenly coming forward with ideas, energy, and courage. I wasn't planning to run. I'd done what I needed to do, and I wanted peace. But then Amir said, "Farah, people finally feel heard because of you. What if your voice was on the board, not as a protester, but as a policymaker?" At first, I hesitated. I wasn't a politician. I didn't like bureaucracy. But I did love our community, and I'd be damned if I let it fall into silence again. So I ran. The campaign was short, a blur of flyers, meet and greets, neighborhood walks. But I didn't make promises. I just shared stories, ours, what we'd survived, what we could build. When election night came, I didn't expect much. There were other solid candidates, people I respected. But when the votes were counted, I won. Unanimously. Rewriting the rules. The first thing I did as president? I tore up the outdated bylaws that the old board had used as weapons. With input from the community, we rewrote them from scratch. Gone were vague rules about appearance standards that targeted specific cultural items like prayer flags or colorful decorations. Gone were punitive fines without clear warnings. Instead, we drafted policies based on inclusion, respect, and transparency. We even created a Community Cultural Day, an annual event written directly into the bylaws, a celebration of food, music, stories, and art from every background represented in the neighborhood. At our first official board meeting, I stood at the podium in the same courtyard where I'd hosted the festival just months earlier. Only now, instead of facing threats and fines, I faced smiles, cheers, and trust. This isn't about winning, I said. It's about rewriting who we are. Together. Chapter Jared. In this your college of a skill theed had been recording everything, and by the time the investigation concluded, vindicating our entire neighborhood, he compiled it all into a powerful short documentary. Colorful Resistance: How One Festival Changed a Community was picked up by a local streaming service. It sparked national attention. I started getting emails from other HOA communities across the country. How did you do it? Can you help us push back? We want to host our own festival now. I replied to every single one. Because it wasn't just about us anymore. One night, after a long meeting, I stood on my porch and watched the neighborhood. It looked different. Not because the houses changed, but because the energy did. People walked more freely. They smiled longer. Kids chalked the sidewalks with hearts and stars. Amina was organizing dance lessons at the park. Tom had volunteered to help set up a neighborhood library box. And across the street, a new family had just moved in, South Asian, like me. They waved shyly. I waved back, heart full. This was what home should feel like. Months later, I got another knock at the door. This time it was Mayor Caldwell himself, with a certificate in hand. For outstanding civic engagement and cultural leadership. He shook my hand and said, "Farah, you didn't just change the rules. You reminded us all what they're supposed to be for." I couldn't help but smile, because he was right. We'd turned pain into purpose, anger into action, silence into song. And now no one could take that away. The HOA tried to shut us down. They underestimated the power of a community with heart. They underestimated the power of culture, joy, and unity. And they definitely underestimated me. But in the end, we didn't just win a fight. We created a legacy. And that legacy? It blooms louder and brighter with every drumbeat, every shared dish, every child's laugh echoing through a neighborhood that finally feels like it belongs to all of us.